In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create your very own React custom hook, which is extremely easier to write than you think. So without any further ado, let's get started. Hello everybody, welcome to Full Stack Simplified. My name is Prashun and I'm here to share some amazing contents related to full stack. If that sounds interesting, don't forget to subscribe this channel for more videos like this. So basically for getting started, I have created this simple functional components. So one is the user component where I am basically fetching a random user data from this random user URL. And another is the address component where I'm doing the same thing and instead of fetching user, I'm fetching some random address data. And accordingly, I have also set up some states as you can see here where we are storing the data and also maintaining a loading state and also an error state. And then basically we have a useEffect block here in both of the components, and inside this block I'm basically hitting this URL and getting some data, and accordingly I'm setting the states. So if we have a quick comparison of these two components, we can clearly see that we are repeating a lot of similar codes and logics in both of these components. Here we are repeating these states, and also in the useEffect we are having kind of same logics in both of the components. So in order to avoid this, we can simply create a function and perform our fetch call to these APIs. But since we are working with React, it will be a great option to write our own custom useFetch hook to get our work done. So if I quickly open my browser and reload this page, we can see that since the data is loading, we are simply getting a loading text for this user component and also for this address component. And once the data fetching has been completed, we are basically replacing this loading text with the random data which we are fetching from this API. So in order to create your own custom hook, you need to simply create a file, and I'm going to say usefetch.js, and basically this file is going to contain our custom hook, which is a simple function returning an object containing our states. And this function is also going to accept two parameters, namely the URL and initial data. And before moving forward, we also need to import use state and use effect hooks from the React library. I'll simply go to this user component and grab this part of the code, and I'm going to simply paste this before this return statement. So now I'm simply going to rename this to data and set data, because obviously we are creating a generic custom hooks which can be used by any of the components. So instead of having any specific name, we shall always have a generic kind of name. And also I'm going to set the initial state of this data to this initial data parameter which we are getting from this useFetch hook. Basically I'm doing this because you may have some situations where you need to have some initial state, maybe an empty array or maybe an empty object or anything else. So basically this initial data will do the job for us. And now I'm going to also rename this as loading and set loading, and initially it will be false and our error state looks fine, and initially it will be also false. Inside the useEffect block, we need to set this to set loading to true, and inside this fetch block, basically when we have this error, we are setting this error to true, and if we have the data, we set that to set data to the response which we are getting from this fetch API. And if there is an error, we are again setting this set error to true. Basically we are setting this error state to true, and finally we are obviously setting our loading state to false. And then I am simply going to return these states, that is data, loading, and the error, which we are going to use in our component. Now that we have done creating our custom hook, let's not also forget to export it so that we can use it in different components. Now it's time to use our custom hooks in our components. So in the user component, I'm simply going to import our useFetch hook, and I'm going to remove all these lines of code and simply say const. We're going to extract the loading the data state and the error state from our useFetch hook. And we are going to pass two parameters as we have already discussed. The first one is the URL and initial state, and I want the initial state to be null for this case. And instead of naming it as loading and data, I can also use the new ES6 feature and I can say loading to be user loading and data to be user data. Similarly, in the address component, we can do this same thing. I'm going to remove these lines of code first. Import the useFetch hook. And again here, I'm going to say loading. And I'm going to name this as address loading. The data state will be named again as the address data. And error will be error itself. And we're going to say use fetch. We're going to pass this URL, this random address URL. And again, in this case, I want the initial data to be null. Now, if we quickly go to my browser and reload this page, we are going to notice that everything is working as it was working before. We are seeing this loading text while the data loads, and then the actual data fetched from the API. Also, we can see that we have reduced a large amount of duplicate codes in our components by writing our own custom hook. So this is how you create your own custom hook and use it in your components. So that was all for this video. I have left all the links and resources for this tutorial in the description below. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe this channel for more videos like this.